Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk. I'm Merle Huckabee. As you know, we talk about real people, real life, and real issues. This is Real Talk. Today, we are going to continue our Mind, Body, and Spirit series. As you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Last week, we talked about what mental health was, and according to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of being. But as we further talked about mental health, we know that it included our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. Mental health affects how we think, how we feel, how we act. It determines how we handle stress and how we relate to others and how we make choices. Mental health is an important stage of life in every stage of our life, be it from childhood, through adolescence, through adulthood. Over the course of our lives, that's everybody, and as I said last week, if you really want to be real about it, if you really want to be honest about it, I think all of us experience some form of mental health challenges. And I said to you last week, I shared a story with you about my uncle, who now I know. I didn't know because this was a taboo. This wasn't something that we talked about in our households. And I shared with you that I believe he suffered from mental illness. He would go into the basement and stay for long periods of time. He wouldn't clean himself up. He wouldn't eat. You know, there was some depression as I know it today. But again, that's not something that we talked about back then. We know that, you know, we can experience mental health, and I'm going to call them issues. I don't want to call them problems. I'm going to call them challenges, better yet. You know, mental health, again, affects our mood, our behavior, and there are many factors that can contribute to mental health challenges. You know, your chemistry, your biology, your genes, your life experiences, especially if you've been impacted by trauma or abuse, if there's a family history of mental problems, or challenges. So, you know, back in the day, if we heard about somebody going to the psychiatrist, ooh, they crazy, you know, that was the stigmatism around that. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 1 in 5 adults, that's 1 in 5 adults live with mental illness. I think they tagged that at 51.5 million people in 2019. We know that mental health is no respecter of person, age, gender, or race. And research shows that mental illness affects tens of millions of people each year. The National Institute on Health, Mental Health said it estimates that only half of the people with mental illness are ever treated. Half. That's pretty alarming. Last week, our guest, Courtney Mitchell, came on. She's the yoga instructor and dance instructor, and she had a powerful testimony. I really did not know we were going to go there, but she had a powerful testimony about her experience with clinical depression. She found healing, she said, through yoga and dance, but she advocated for herself when she knew something wasn't right. And she found herself in this dark space when her father passed away. So we know that there are conditions that can bring us to a point of mental challenges. So she said that she knew something wasn't right and she reached out for help. And she even spoke to her mother before doing it, and her mother supported her. She said, that's the biggest thing. We need someone who's going to listen. And that's very, so she advocated for herself. She scheduled an appointment to see a doctor because, again, she knew something wasn't right. And today she shares her gift of healing through yoga and meditation. Well, today I have another guest that, as we continue our Mind, Body, and Spirit series, I have a guest that is going to tell us a little bit more about the clinical side of mental health. My guest today is someone I know personally. We went to Perseo Julian High School together. We are Jaguars for life. And she is a phenomenal young woman and a sister. She's my sister from another mother. And she is married to Pastor Andre of the Growth Gathering Fellowship Church, and he is also a former Jaguar. She is a mother of, as she described, 4 precious gems from heaven, a mother of 4. She's also the first lady, again, of Growth Gathering Fellowship Church. And she's joining us today because she wears another hat professionally. She is a licensed clinical social worker at the University of Chicago. She is joining us today as none other than Tracy Lanier. How are you, my sister?
I am well. I am doing so well and elated and honored and humbled to be on your show. So thank you.
Oh, we really, really do appreciate you taking time to come on such a beautiful day. It is beautiful here in Chicago, and definitely I know that you could be doing other things, and we want to get the word out though that this is mental health is something that we need to continue the discussion always on. Can you, I know I said a lot about you, but can you tell our audience a little bit more about you and your professional background?
You did a wonderful job doing that. But I must say, I probably come with more than 20 years for sure of working in mental health. In some capacity, shape, or form. My focus is always on children and families, working with children, and of course you have to work with families because kids grow up in families. And so I think that for me, if you were to wrap me up and just to try to give one definition, is I'm committed to helping just to move families along in healthy ways. So many children are exposed to so many things that ultimately impact them and how they grow up and how they think about the world, how they explore the world or not, and how they make it through the world. And with so much going on, the key to healthy children and them getting off to a healthy start are healthy families, healthy moms and healthy dads, and that are around them. And so I would say my practice, since I've been in social services, has really been focused on the family.
Wow, and that's so important, the support system. As you said, you cannot focus on the child without, focusing on what their support system is, which is their families. Can you tell me, I described mental health. Did I leave anything out? What is mental health? I'm sure, did I leave?
No.
Did I leave?
No, you did a really great job. I think that if I was just to break it down in layman's terms, it is a part of us. It's part of health. And a lot of times we try to separate it out, but it's integrated in our overall health. We go to the doctor, and if the doctor tells us to take a certain medication for diabetes or high blood pressure, things like that, we do what we need to do to get those levels, or to try to maintain quality type of life, so we can continue to engage in life and do things that we want to do. Mental health is the same way. And it probably is more important most times, because if your mental health is at the level and capacity of a strength and is positive and it surpasses what people say that are negative, those type of things can actually help. And research does show that it has a direct impact on how you deal with chronic health conditions, how you deal with stressors, how you deal with things that just have traumas and things that happen in your life. Because the bottom line is we're going to all face it. But how you deal with it is going to all be based on where are you with how you handle your mental health.
True, very, very true. And I think I just totally agree with that. And as I said last week, a lot of times we go to the doctor and we're focused on our physical health and forgetting about our emotional health. And I know that a lot of the providers are taking the time. I know that when I go to the doctor now, here's something that they say: do you feel safe at home? And I know that may deal with domestic violence or trying to see if there's any abuse of any sort going on. Mm-hmm. They're starting to take steps because it's not something that people just come out and openly talk about. So, it's important that, I believe a pulse is kept on that. And if you're not feeling well, that's the first person, besides your family of you need to share it with is your doctor, your provider. I mentioned that it was a taboo. We really didn't talk about it. Matter of fact, we didn't talk about it at all coming up. I just don't recall the conversation. Do you think that mental health is still a taboo, that there's still a stigmatism surrounding the discussion of mental health?
I think in terms of getting down to the nitty-gritty of mental health and taking it really seriously is still a challenge for our communities, especially of brown and people of, black and brown people of color, because what we do, and this example, we know that cousin such and such is probably struggling with the mental health. But what we do is we kind of handle like, he just crazy. I just let him go. He crazy. And that's tough, because what we're doing is we're just kind of putting it on the back burner and not really taking the time to look at how significant and serious that is, and how much in jeopardy that person's life really can be in, and how we can, if we rally, if we talk about it differently, if we address it differently, if we approach the people differently and show them a different type of connection about something like that, I think that, that could make a difference. But because oftentimes in our families, we kind of downplay it.
Yes.
And they're crazy, something wrong with them, they cuckoo. But it's a real situation. And if truth be told, everybody has bouts of some type of depression, whether it's insidious and they always feel this way and they can't find their way out, or if they have a clinical break, like they really have a bout where it's really bad and they can't get out the bed, they don't wash, they don't eat, or either they don't sleep, like it messes up your adaptive skills, you just cannot function. And that's when it gets really significant and serious, to the point where you may have to be hospitalized and things like that. But we don't look at that. If somebody's shifted how they, enjoy things and they start to become a recluse or things like that, those are signs. Like they're significant signs. But a lot of times we just say, well, I'm just going to give them their space. Well, sometimes that's the worst thing that they need. That's not what they need. They do need people to rally around them. And for me, it's not just about being a person who's clinically minded, but it's God-minded.
Yes.
Is a very important piece for me, and I integrate that in whatever I do, whatever type of work, whether it's clinical work or I'm just working with families to get them connected to resources, whatever I'm doing, it is a God ordained, it's a mission.
Yes.
To care about our people enough to slow that thing down. I mean, the Bible talks about mental health. It talks about guarding your mind and things like that. That's what it is. And so, believers, we really want to be more mindful of that. And people that we're trying to get on board on our Jesus ride,
yes.
We are trying to get them to understand how delicate, sensitive, yet how important it is for us to stop playing it lightly, because we know it exists. We know people are suffering, but instead of us trying to just kind of deal with it and I'm not saying everybody, but a large majority of us, we don't deal with it. And you have to have serious conversations to say, hey, really such and such is not totally doing that because they just want to. They really are suffering. They really, like you said, are being impacted. Their behavior is being impacted. How they're thinking is being impacted. I mean, it is a brain thing after a while, where the chemicals in the brain are not maybe producing dopamine or something that really helps to make you feel happy and things like that. And it's hard to conjure that stuff up. And that's why a lot of people are doing a lot of mind, body, wellness approaches to their whole health, and especially mental health, because those types of things, exercising and laughing and being around joyful things, help create that particular hormone that we need to kind of overcome these bouts of feeling down and depressed and things like that. Vitamin D, all of that stuff. So it is a physiological part to this that people kind of just think, people are making the decision. Nobody wants to be down and out. Nobody wants to feel sucky at the end of the day. Nobody wants to feel draggy and irritable and irritated and snapping out and not having connections with friends or families because of their behavior. Nobody wants to be that way, but sometimes they just don't know how to get out, and they don't know how to reach out for help because of the type of feedback that they get.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to jump ahead. I want to ask you this question because I'm going to come back to some other questions, but you brought this up, and I want to address it because our journey here, our faith walk, does your ministry and work with your husband, Pastor Andre, does that guide you? I believe I'm answering my question. I believe you've really answered it. It guides you in your professional capacity. Is that correct?
It does. It informs everything that I do, because it's hard to work with people who are struggling. Let's just be real. You can have all the clinical training in the world, and we know that there's things called countertransference and transference that's going on when you're working with people, because we're human. So I got to put the super on my natural in order to work with folks to go to the next level. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I have to seek out the Word of God. I have to have them consult and tell me, how to go forth and handle working with very tough situations and cases that they happen all day, every day, but these are unique people with their own individual walks. And even though we may have similar things that happen to us, it's unique to them. It's tough for them. And so I need counsel, because these are all different people. Some people they come in and they're more open to the process. Some people are not. They're not ready. But I never want to leave them hanging. So even if we just talk about, what they want to talk about, and pray and do things like that. But I need God's guidance to do anything and everything that I do as it's relating to people's mental health and their well-being going forward in their lives. They get stuck. They cannot get past certain steps, and I can't make that happen.
Yes.
That can make that happen. So I have to call on him. Anything that I do, right in the midst of having a conversation, I just come in that space and you speak for me. You turn the situation around. You give me the words that I need to say.
Yes.
To fix something so that person will be more open to receiving. And I will tell you, when I do that, God never lets me down. He always shows up. He always guides me, tells me when to go. He tells me when to stop. And that is true.
If people that are leading our world, that are in positions of leadership in this world, in our state, and in local levels, would just seek God. Seek Him first. Seek Him first for counsel and guidance, Could you imagine? Could you imagine what the world would be like? I'm filled just hearing you speak, because I know that patients that come before you are blessed, are blessed by you and being in your
Thank you.
presence, you know. I'm going to share something towards the end here, because I mean, like I said, you and I could talk all day and light up the world in the room. What is the age demographics of your clientele, of your patients that you see?
So currently, my primary ages, which is going to be weird, are birth to 3. And that's because I work with early intervention children. So, of course, I'm working with their families more, but they are the clients, so to speak. So it's very unique because I'm working with parents to help give them some strategies and some emotional support when they're going through finding out they may have a child with ADHD or a child who has autism or apraxia or CP or some type of neurodevelopmental disorder, the residuals of prematurity, global developmental delays and things like that affect, how they're functioning day to day, and they're behind their same age peers. So, that's a lot to take on. So you have a baby and you're thinking that, the baby's going to come here just like you imagine, perfect, and then something goes wrong. And that's not the case. And then parents are left to navigate through this. So at this point, they're heartbroken, and there's a mourning that happens with that. And so I find being an early intervention social worker is very unique in its approach and kind of how I've developed it to be, and that I'm working with the parents so that we can start off as early as possible, creating a healthy interaction, parent-child interaction and connection, and trying to remove those barriers, those social emotional strains and stressors that can get in the way of them being emotionally available to their children. So that's what I've done now. I've moved into, since COVID, working with older children within the Comer Hospital because of the pandemic, and so many people were at home with their children who are usually at school and getting their special education programs and things in place. And then, parents have to now do that. They have to be the teacher, the parent, the everything. And it's very difficult. And so some parents are just at the point, just at the brink, they were very stressed out. And then some people definitely still were able to work, but the stressors of, if I am going to continue to work, or they did lose their jobs and they're unemployed, well, those things start to take precedence over a child that's struggling, because I got how I'm going to keep a roof over our head, or at least keep food in our homes and things like that. Stuff still goes on. Thank God for some of the relief, but there's still a day-to-day that exists that nobody could get around. We still got to make sure that we have the essentials to live during the COVID. So that was really, really hard for parents. So I basically deal across the gamut with the age demographic. Our department goes up to about 10-year-olds, but we still consult and get a lot of calls and things for teenagers and things like that. And then with the church, I still do things with older children and young adults and adults. So I pretty much, because of just me and the different roles that I play, I'm probably working with the whole gamut of people.
Which is really awesome. Because, I'm just blown when you said birth. When you said birth, and never thinking about, again, we're talking about the support system of that child. Not to mention, you do have some mothers who just weren't ready to be mothers, or who may feel some emotional detachment from their children, So
absolutely,
it's just mind-blowing when you said birth. What are some of the common disorders that you treat?
Really, I deal primarily with diagnosing of autism, and then we try to make sure that we get them connected to services for treating the behaviors pretty much that come along with that diagnosis, and provide some type of parent supports with that. So, ideally it would be good for them to get in a place that addresses the needs of that child concretely, and then the needs of the parents to continue to support, whether that is some type of parent-child interaction therapy sometimes, and learning how to work with those children and respond to their needs and their behaviors, because it can be very difficult when behaviors can be really extreme, and the children can't control that, and we have to teach them those things. So primarily it is children who are on the autism spectrum that we are really, focused in on, but we will get children who have some speech delay, children who have just global developmental delay. We might not really understand, maybe pervasive, and we don't really know why it exists, but we know that if we keep giving them speech and developmental therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, but they make strides, they improve. And so the goal is by the time they get to school age, like kindergarten, that they're doing better, that, and they have that support system within the healthcare system to advocate for their kids, to make sure that they are developing properly and that there are no comorbid things going on. Because typically when children have, autism, they have some other diagnosis like a sensory issue or ADHD or something like that. So it's hard.
So you as I'm sure you know, when someone is depressed, when someone is down, and that can happen to any of us, and probably has. And of course, you said the difference is how we address it, how we get back up. What would you say, when you look at the news and we see that mental health is probably basically a part of a lot of our news of what we see today, the foundational part. But last year I noticed there was a rise. I don't know if you caught this on some of the reports. A lot of policemen were committing suicide. We've been seeing that. I think the year before that and a couple of years before that, we saw children that were committing suicide, some as a result of being bullied. This just crosses the spectrum. And as I said, mental health is no gender, it's no race, it's no age. It's a part of us, as you said. But what would be some of the warning signs, the symptoms that someone needs help?
Yeah, you bring up a really, really important and good point about that, and it has no respect of person. But the warning signs for kids and the warning signs for adults can look different. So for children, I'll start with them first. It's interesting that some kiddos or children, especially young kids, they could have depression, but people mistake it for things like ADHD. Or some type of sensory problem, or just like kids are agitated, they can't sit still and things like that. We have to really watch that. That's why my work can be really challenging at times, because me trying to sift out what the behavior that I see presented, is this all just related to the diagnosis? Or is this related to something that they've been exposed to or have experienced that I don't even know about, or they can't tell you? So PTSD, even, being in the hospital, some kids have been hospitalized for months at a time. You have hospital trauma, and, they don't know how to express that and things like that. So you can see a lot of agitation and irritation and hyperactivity and things in kiddos. It's just not the downing look or the sad look. That exists as well. Maybe feeding. Feeding is not good. Some people think like they're having a feeding issue, but sometimes they're actually they're doing the same thing an adult would do. They just don't want to eat. Or maybe because they're having a lack of an attachment to a parent figure. It's not an attachment, and the parent is force feeding or something like that. The child is kind of traumatized, so they don't eat. But that's a form of a control system where they're that's a mental health thing, because a lot of what happens in mental illness is, or the results of it, is all about control and lack thereof. And so if I lose control of things, you'll see me behaving and acting certain ways, maybe erratically, irrationally, because I don't have control. So I may, be obsessive with something. It's so many different things. Now with the adult, definitely the adult can be very irritated and agitated, cranky a lot is what we want to say. They can, either sleep a lot or not sleep at all. Appetite could either be eating too much or not eating at all. It could be a person who lost that desire to do a lot of things that they used to do. So people who used to hang out with their friends once in a while, whether they had a whole bunch of friends or a few, they still hung out. They still had that desire, but then they don't. You find them more and more saying, no, I'll just stay in, and things like that. They just kind of, stick to themselves. And so you have that. But you also can have people who are really like overkill, like it up and acting erratically and kind of really robust in everything. We have to watch out for that too. That when it comes to suicide, suicidal ideations and things like that, people or children and adults alike, they may say and do things that sometimes you don't even, it's a little hint and it makes your eyebrows raise, but you don't go any further because you might not have a context. So you have to people who are related to folks and see them all the time or in their presence, they know though, they'll pick up on a little something. Now, sometimes we'll say we don't know, but if we really sat down and really thought about the pattern of what somebody is exhibiting and some of the commentary that they make, or even some of the behaviors that they exude, where they don't care about things, they start like getting rid of stuff and, things like that, or they are down and then they've been down and all of a sudden they're just so happy. Like that was a real, wow, so they start like, they want to hang out with people but not a long time, but it's just all of a sudden it's this shift. Well, wow. Stuff like that, because we want to see a pattern of you wanting to hang out before we not get worried about that shift.
Yes. I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's so many gamuts of this, that in many pockets that we could go into. And I wish we had a lot of time, but I'm definitely going to invite you back, because and hope that our schedules, because I know it was really tough for you to kind of get this scheduled. I know that you mentioned early intervention. Early intervention, it really creates better outcomes. Is that correct?
It does. It does. It has proven itself to be true that it does create better outcomes. But people do have to, it's a lot of work that goes into it. It's going to take a village, like I said, different systems that you learn how to navigate through. And so because all of those can be tricky, because of a lot of bureaucracy and things that go on, not enough funding for a lot of things, especially for, again, people of color and who live in certain neighborhoods and communities that do not have access to the sometimes their outcomes won't be as good as other people's outcomes. And so I think my part of my journey and part of my calling is to, as much as I can, try to dispel that is actually a reality. So as much as I can try to create some resources and try to give people some empowerment to go and figure them out themselves, because parents are great resources and they find a lot of things, but networking is important, to be with other families and get connected with other parents. And I think that sometimes when you have a child that is in early intervention services or receiving that, because of the taboos that exist, they do not necessarily connect with other people or want to share that with other people. But in actuality, that is the best thing, because you find play groups in that, so all the kids can come together and parents can be with them to help them just to feel normal, to have kids play with other kids, even though, they may be lacking speech or they can't walk very well, but that's okay. parent support. That's a parent support system too, because we are kind of taking the same journey. So yeah, I think that when you talk about early intervention and you talk about that, it definitely makes a huge difference. It can be minimal, but it can be maximum.
You know, you kind of hit upon an area where I was going to go, and because my next question to you, of course, was going to be, what are some of the challenges in your profession as it relate to health disparities and, you know, patients receiving the mental services and resources that's needed, and you've already named, you know, that there are some. You know, do you find this particularly as it relates to you talked about people of color, but do you find that there are enough resources for?
Absolutely not. No, there are not enough resources. And then, you know, some of the other challenges there are resources that are out there, but we don't know about them. So I'm loving that you're doing this because it can be a platform for people to post that they're doing therapy. They could be independent providers, people of color, especially because a lot of times people of color want to be, and you know, if they're going to do it, they want to be with people of color. So that's the thing. But you know, insurances make it challenging because if you don't have the right type of insurance that can get you access to mental health services, then you kind of out there, and you may want to, but you don't have the type of insurance. However, again, I try to get parents to think outside the box. You may have to go to a outpatient clinic setting where they do offer mental health services, and you go there for your health care, and they actually may provide mental health services, or they may have a subsidiary or somebody that they work with that they refer people to. But again, networking is so important when you're working with your children and their needs. And then especially like for our kiddos, that's definitely insurance driven. It's definitely those who have the insurance can get connected and have more of an, I would say, an array of opportunities, more so than kiddos who don't have the type of insurance that can connect them to. You know, Illinois is still one of those states that are struggling with what Medicaid avails us to be able to get. And it's shameful because everybody should have the opportunity to get that type of service, mental health services and services for their children that they need who have special needs. And that becomes very limited when you're on Medicaid. Some will cover some will cover none. Now with autism, there was they finally have passed this mandated thing where they would cover autism, but that's not going well because a lot of people they don't pay a lot with Medicaid, unfortunately, and all the things that are required to provide the services that won't even cover, you know, so it's really difficult for parents to access, depending on the insurance. So just say this: if you have a PPO, you have more opportunities. If you don't have a PPO, or I think that most places will take the HMO, of course. You just have to go through the referral process and things like that, or check with your insurance. But with Medicaid, it's tough, you know, and they may have a few resources, but they're limited.
Wow. I mean, absolutely, it's about the have and the have-nots. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And, you know, perhaps maybe that's why we see so many people who are in need of mental health services and they are just not able to get those services and access those services. Before we go, I want to, you know, there are two questions that I want to ask you. And one of those questions, it may be three, but I know you know, time. Um, what could you say to listeners that you believe isn't said enough to possibly, you know, combat mental illness and stop the stigmatism and stop the taboo? What could you say to our listeners that maybe just isn't said enough about mental health or awareness? What could you say?
I would say that if you were to think about mental health in a analogy format, so if you saw your loved one stuck on a track in a car that had it stalled or it had an accident and it was stuck on that track, and a train was coming, you would do everything in your power to get your loved one out of that car.
Absolutely.
Everything that you could do. I think that we have to, first of all, stop downplaying mental health issues and be honest with ourselves to say at some point in time in our lives, we felt overwhelmed, whether it was triggered by a life circumstance or maybe something physiological is going on. But we've all had some bouts where we felt hopeless or helpless. We found ourselves feeling sad and crying all the times, or just triggered, just unhappy from losses, so much death, and sickness. And, of course, we are more exposed to social media at the drop of a hat that you're taking in all of that. I would definitely say that we have to stop downplaying the effect and the impact that this is all having on us as human beings. We are just human beings, flawed, delicate. I mean, we weren't built to kind of handle things over and over and over, but it is through the grace of God that we've been able to do that. And so, of course, I would not be able to go on and say anything about what I would say to families if I wouldn't say is that if you give your life to Christ, then you're not just by yourself. You will have the strength and the power, because God never said that this was going to be an easy road, but this journey teaches you so much. And it's not just about us being here on this earth. It's God has endowed us and has placed a particular purpose for our lives. It is our choice how we're going to live it, how we're going to decide to do it. But when you try to do it on your own, I want you to know that it's only going to go so far. You only can go so far before you run out of steam, and the hopelessness and the helplessness will remain hopelessness and helplessness. But if you give your life to Christ and you learn who he is and who he made you to be, then you will have that intrinsism, that spirit, that Holy Spirit that allows you to go far past what you ever thought you can go through on your own. That's the only way that I can really answer that, because that is who I am, and that's it for me. I mean, I can be a clinician, I can be a social worker, and I can do all I can do, but at some point it stops. It's a ceiling on that, and I can't do anything else, and I can't make a difference because I don't. But it is the Father God that makes sure anything that you can think of, imagine, it can happen. And your faith, your trust, and your ability to take what he brings you out of, thank him for it, and then pass that on to the next person. One by one, we can start to get better. We can heal from broken hearts. We can heal from trauma and loss and, all these things that are going on, the fear. You can handle fears better. That really kind of play into your depression and your anxiety and different things like that. It takes a higher power to really make the transformation, to live a happy, fulfilled life where you're at your best and people can have the experience of you being at your best. That's what will make a difference in our society, in this world.
Glory, glory, glory. Amen, amen. You said it. God is at the center. He has to be at the center of it all. I know we're running out of time, but I want to share something with you. And I think I've told you this before. You just don't know. When I was going through breast cancer, you lifted me up. You prayed, you and your husband, Pastor Andre, with the prayer warriors. You touched base with me. You sent me an encouraging and inspirational text. Sometimes it was daily, sometimes it was weekly. But you just don't know what you did for me. And that meant so much to me. And I found myself, even as a believer, when you have that kind of diagnosis and you're hit with that, your faith is being challenged. Your human side, of course, when you hear that you have cancer, the first thing you think is, I'm going to die. And as I heard a doctor once say, it's not generally the cancer that kills people, it's their mindset. And I just thank God for you, for your just being there for me and sending an encouragement. You don't know what that did for me. And so I know that we have to get the word out. You know, if we were Meg the Stallion or some of those folks, people would tune in and listen, you know, because we're shaking our behinds, but we're getting the word out. To God be the glory. That is one of the reasons I did this, is to share information. And you are just such a warm spirit, and you mean so much to me, and I thank you so much. I don't want to start crying, but I just know that you will never know what a difference you made in my life. I would be laying in my bed and I could not get up, and I would look at my phone, and the text that you sent said, hey, I'm praying for you, and sending me an encouraging word. And I started doing that with people after that, you know. So you really inspired me. You not only walk the walk, you talk the talk, you walk the walk. You're a lady of faith, of action, and certainly we appreciate you. We appreciate you being on the front lines, because this has been tough in this pandemic. And you know, people trying to practice and go to work and still get health services through all of this. It's been a tough time. It's been a tough time for all of us, but I just praise God. I praise him. I didn't worry, Tracy, and I haven't worried. And you know why? Because I know if God can heal and bring me through that, he can bring us through anything. And that's where my faith, that's where I park it at. I am so grateful you came to be a part of our show today. Is there any information, if people wanted to find out about your services, is there any information where you can give us that they can find out more? I know you all have a great ministry over at Growth Gathering Fellowship Church. You are the First Lady, you and Pastor Andre. Is there any information, anything you want to share with our viewers of where they can find you? Any more health services? I will, let people know about the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline as we close out. But any information that you can give?
So for me, if you want to get in contact with me in terms of early intervention services, I'm not early intervention, but I provide the service for children who are in the program who may need to have an evaluation to get a formal diagnosis so that they can get access to services and make those, strides to the next step. You can call me at 773-834-0622. So that's my office number, and you can just say that you heard me on here and you just want to learn more about that program. But if you want to get in touch with me to just chat or just to get connected or to have some time to walk through some of the tough journey, then you can go to our website and just kind of leave a note. So we're at tggfchicago.com, and I think once you navigate through the website, that we will have other stuff up there. But even if you just want to go in the commentary or say, hey, I want to get connected to First Lady or something like that, and you can leave their number and I can be able to reach out to them. So, either one of those. I don't have a private practice right now, so I can't give you a personal number to get, directly in contact with me other than my work number. But you can definitely do that.
Thank you so much. Tracy, will you come back and see us and talk to us more?
Absolutely.
This conversation needs to continue. it doesn't need to just stop with
Absolutely.
Mental Health Awareness Month. We need to continue the conversation. So will you come back? You'll come back and see us?
Absolutely, absolutely. As a matter, I may be coming to you about some upcoming things that we want to do with the church, with overall health and things like that, and we'll be advertising and things like that. So in some months we're thinking about doing, especially coming out of COVID and trying to get back into life and dealing with the anxieties that are going along with that and just healthcare concern, all of that. So we definitely, I definitely accept that invitation, and I definitely see it as a service and an honor to do that. And you just warm my heart, because what you're doing is you're paying it forward. Because the bottom line is that anybody can get a diagnosis. Anybody can find themselves, having the loss of a loved one or a child, or, it's tough. Yes. So none of us are free from any of those things, violence and the results of that stuff. None of us. I mean, everybody is living in this world, and we are impacted and affected by it. And if you're not, you should be. And so with that, I just thank you for allowing me this time and this space, and thank you for your just beautiful words. And, that's what we do. We do that for each other, because you encourage me now. You don't know that you've been texting me on days where I need that extra boost and push just to do what I do. So it's reciprocated, and I love that you have taken the word of God and manifested it to give back. To reach out back out to your fellow brothers and sisters. So using this platform as a ministry to get the word out is just a wonderful thing. So I say, to God be the glory, and I'm so happy and proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much, and to God be the glory. That's it. He is the center of it all, and He's the only reason that we exist and can do the things that we do. Thank you so much, Tracy. I'm going to look forward to hearing more from you and for you coming back. Thank you for joining us here on Real Talk. I want to let people know that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK. That's 8255. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, available to anyone in suicidal crisis or emotional distress. So again, that's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That's 1-800-273-8255. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'd like to thank my guest, Tracy Lanier. She has indeed enlightened us and empowered us more about mental health awareness. We're going to continue our series next week on Mind, Body, and Spirit series. I also like to thank Anthony Greer, my technical producer, and Tanya Thomas, my producer. Here at Real Talk, as you know, I say that to God be the glory. The reason I started this show, Dr. King said that our lives begin to end on the day we become silent about those things that matter. Thank you again for tuning in, and this is Real Talk. God bless you. Enjoy this beautiful weekend, and we'll see you next week.